Shalom friends, Larry Stamm here. Grace and peace to each one of you watching this video. In this teaching, we are going to talk about standards and how standards relate to our Christian witness and the gospel message. You know, everybody has standards, and the reality is nobody lives up to even their own standards. And this reality can actually help us explain the gospel and people's need to trust in Jesus for the forgiveness of sin and the gift of eternal life. Let me explain. To begin with, we understand as followers of Jesus that God has put within each human being a conscience, an inner sense of right and wrong. But tragically, however, our conscience, this inner moral compass that ought to point us to delineate between right and wrong, can become dulled and suppressed. And we may not even be able to hear its warnings. Instead, we deliberately choose to do wrong. And the more we do this, the more calloused or hardened our conscience can become. In fact, some people, the Bible declares in Romans chapter 1, verse 18, some people actually suppress the truth by their wickedness. In light of this moral compass either being dulled or suppressed by people, you and I as Christians can illuminate this bad news of our sinful condition that separates us from God, and then highlight the good news of forgiveness found in Jesus by using these simple opening questions. Do you have standards? And if they say yes, you then can say, well, do you live up to your own standards? I can tell you in all my years of witnessing, I've never had someone tell me they don't have standards. When I've asked somebody, do you have standards? They respond, yeah, I've got standards. And then the follow-up is, well, do you live up to your own standards? I've never had anybody tell me that they live up to their own standards. And so the follow-up question, after they confess or admit that they fail to meet the mark or hit the target of even their own standards, is this. You can follow up in so many words and say, well then, how much more do we as human beings fall short of God's holy, perfect, and righteous standard? We then can share that God has set in place certain standards, and it is sin to break those standards. As Romans chapter 3 verse 23 declares, all have sinned and fall short of God's glory. In other words, God has a holy, righteous, perfect standard, and all of us miss the mark. And the Bible tells us then in Romans chapter 6 that the wages of sin, the consequence of missing the mark or not reaching the standard, is death. For the wages of sin is death, eternal separation from God. Friends, that's bad news, and that's why Jesus came. You see, Jesus came and He lived up to God's holy, perfect standard. He lived a sinless life. And then He paid our sin debt in full on the cross and rose again on the third day, conquering the power of sin and death. So that you and I as human beings, we could be forgiven and we could be reconciled to God. We could experience abundant and eternal life. And friends, that's good news. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever would believe in Him should not perish, but have everlasting life. And when we think about it, standards is foundational in understanding the gospel message. Because if we don't understand the fact that we fail to live up to God's holy standard, if we don't understand our sin, we can't understand the grace of God found in the person and work of Jesus. So I hope that this has been an encouragement and an enlightenment to you and instructive as we've talked about standards. And I pray that in your Christian witness, as God opens up doors of opportunity, that you will use this tact of highlighting standards and our falling short of those standards in your witness to others, that they may come to a place where they're actually convicted of their sin and put their trust in Jesus. Well, I hope this instruction has been an encouragement to you. If it has, I encourage you to like the video, share the video with others. If you've not done so, like our Larry Stam Ministries Facebook page. And until next time, friends, the Lord richly bless you and keep you. Shalom.